Buongiorno. Here's Paul Scorpin again to give the third talk in English here from our home in Italy. It's been quite hot, 35 degrees Celsius every day. I'm here to give a talk today that I actually gave in German yesterday, a Zoom presentation yesterday to some people about a very strange and peculiar island and an even stranger, peculiar book or text. The island's called Patmos, and it's part of the 12 islands in the Aegean Sea, not far from the islands of Samos or even from Asia Minor. And the book is called the Apocalypse, or the Book of Revelations. And the reason I'm giving this talk right now is because in about 3.5 weeks I'll be traveling there with a group of people to spend a week or so on the island, experiencing both the island and the Book of Revelations. And I'm going to explain why that's so interesting and why this is the 7th year in a row that I've been offering this trip. Sometimes in German, sometimes in English, and sometimes in both languages. The story about the origins of Patmos is actually quite beautiful, and I'm just going to share it with you because it has a lot of truth in it. So the moon goddess, Selene, was sitting high on her mountain range in Asia Minor called Latos, enjoying a beautiful night and bathing the earth in her moon rays. And then comes along Artemis. Artemis is an Anatolian goddess. And she says, "Hi, Selene, how you doing?" And Selene says, "I'm fine." And Artemis says, "Can I sit with you this evening?" And Selene said, "Yeah, I wouldn't mind having some company." And they sit together and they're looking out over the beautiful seas and islands and so forth. And then Artemis says to Selene, can you shine just a little brighter? I think I see something on the floor of the ocean there, the floor of the sea there. So Selene gave it a little bit of a boost. And she said, "My goodness," Artemis said, "My goodness, do you see that?" And Selene says, "I see it, yeah. It's a beautiful piece of land, deep below the surface of the ocean." And Artemis says, "I think it's mine." And so Artemis says, "I got to find Apollo, my twin brother, and ask him to bring it up to the surface of the ocean, the sea." So she tracks down Apollo, and she says, "Apollo, can you do me a favor, brother?" And Apollo says, "Sure, sis." And Artemis explains to her brother that she just saw a beautiful piece of land, but the problem is it's lying on the bottom of the ocean. "Can you do something about it, Apollo? Can you bring it up for me?" And Apollo, being a good boy, said, "I think we better check with Papa, Zeus." And Artemis thinks to herself, "It's no problem because Zeus will do anything I say," and always has, because he loves me so dearly. So Zeus gives them permission, and Apollo manages to bring this piece of land up to the surface of the island, surface of the sea, and to this day it's called Patmos. It's shaped like a seahorse. Okay. And it's well known in Christianity because it's the island where John was banned for 3 years by the emperor. And during his 3-year stay on the island, he went to a cave, and suddenly the Christ appeared in a vision and gave him the Apocalypse, the Book of Revelations. And today there's also a beautiful monastery on top of the second highest mountain. It's called the Monastery of John, and it's one of the wealthiest monasteries in Greece. As a matter of fact, Patmos belongs to Constantinople. It doesn't belong to Athens. But the thing is, there's a secret history, not so secret to Patmos, which a lot of people aren't aware of, and that is that for a long time it was first a Hellenic island and then a Roman island. And actually, if you look closely at the Monastery of John, you'll see that plenty of evidence, there's even a plaque to indicate that there was once an Artemis temple there. Probably stood there, we don't know, we can say maybe 300-400 years before Christ, and maybe up until around 600 after Christ, 600-700 after Christ. And then it was destroyed and recycled around 1084, about 1,000 years ago, and built into a monastery. And you see plenty of evidence of this because the columns that are supporting the structure today are actually very feminine, and they're taken from the Artemis Temple. And the cave, which is very famous, is not far from the monastery, just down the hill a little bit. And if you go into the cave, and this is apparently where they believe John received the vision and the book of Revelations, you can see, if you look closely, and you look to the right as you're facing the altar where John supposedly stood and braced himself against the bedrock, you can see carved into the bedrock grooves, actually quite feminine. They're wavy grooves. And there's no moisture in the cave, so it's not to divert rainwater. Rather, there was a very popular goddess in Anatolia called Cybele, very popular. And she was known to love caves. And if you go through Asia Minor, like we do once a year with a tour that I lead, you'll find caves after caves after caves where there was an altar to Cybele. Even all around Ephesus, there are plenty of caves and stela that they found celebrating and venerating Cybele. Also on the island of Samos is a beautiful cave which symbolizes the birth channel and the rebirth channel. And so we know that religions, when they replace the previous religion, they like to recycle not only the building stones, but they like to recycle the energy. Because these places are power places. And more than likely in this cave, before the coming of Christianity and the new story built around the cave, a beautiful story, probably they venerated the goddess Cybele there. And they would bring then animals to sacrifice there, sacrifice them on the altar, and they needed to divert the blood flow away from the altar, and that's why they carved these niches in the floor. And it's also very well known that the Aeschylus monastery, which is always built on the highest point of every Greek island, was once the site of the Helios, the sun god. And also in Greekos, which is a beautiful bay, there's a rock that goes into the bay, and that was clearly an Aphrodite temple, and probably also a place where they venerated Cybele for a long time before the Hellenic folk came. And Scala, which is the port city where all the ships come in, there was an Apollo temple there, more than likely, along with a hippodrome for horse racing. And above Scala, there's the old city of Patmos, which probably had as many as maybe 30,000 residents at the time that John came to the island. Okay, so that's the other story. That's the pre-Christian story of Patmos. And the story goes that John, who left the Holy Land with Maria, the Mother Maria, and Maria Magdalena, and went to Ephesus, and was living in Ephesus as a young man, maybe 20 years old, because he was only 16 when he was with Christ. And so 3 years later, he would be 19, and he had the responsibility of taking Mother Mary to safety, along with Maria Magdalena. And there are graves for probably all three of these people in Ephesus. They even found the home where Maria, Mother Mary, was at home. And apparently, the fake news of the church, and I'm not against the church, but it's fake news, is that John was punished for trying to convert people to Christianity. And I say that's fake news because the news even goes further. You get this image in Christianity, both Orthodox, Catholic, and Protestant, that John was left on an abandoned island, And the island was not at all abandoned. It was a thriving island. And John was then an older man because he'd been living in Ephesus for a while. So he might have been around 70 or 80 years old. And this is the whole story of the church too. A lot of theologians in academia, they say it's not the same John. It's John the theologian who was banned to Patmos because he couldn't be because of his age. And that's not a watertight argument at all, because if you think that John was only 16 when he met Christ, and 19 when Christ went the path of the cross, and then went to Ephesus as a young man, maybe 20 years old, 19 years old, and that would be the year 20, then we go ahead 60 years, or 50 years later, John would be 70 or 80 years old. No problem there. And they also say that it's not the same John that wrote the book of the Gospel of John, because the Gospel of John is written in beautiful Greek, okay? And they forget to remind themselves that when John received this vision, he was overwhelmed, because the vision is so dynamic and so unbelievable in many ways, that he was probably overwhelmed. And he had apparently a scribe, Proclus. So Proclus wrote down the vision, and John just dictated it to him. So that means Proclus wrote it, and maybe Proclus's mother language was not Greek. And also because of it was so rapid, these visions, Proclus could probably hardly keep up. Okay, so. And there's another reason why we believe, and this is what Dascalos told me, we believe that it was the same John that wrote the book of the Gospel of John and the book of Revelations, is that if you know the Gospel of John carefully, then you know that John works with the number 7. As a matter of fact, every healing that takes place in the Gospel of John takes place either on the 7th hour, the 6th hour going into the 7th, or the 7th day. Okay? That's a secret language in John. And so, John heals the paralyzed man on the Sabbath. John frees the blind man from his handicap on the Sabbath. He meets with a Samaritan woman. He heals the son of the nobleman exactly on the 6th hour, going into the 7th hour. And that means the number 7, like in the book of Genesis, means a completion and then a rebirth. And John also works with 2 landscapes. So John works with a landscape which is in the Holy Land, which goes from down below the sea level and the Sea of Gennesaret, and then up to Jerusalem. And then Jesus makes this travel, I think, 3 times in the Gospel of John. And he works also with another landscape, and the landscape is within sight of us. That means the landscape of the 7 chakras, which is also a very dynamic landscape. So you can read John in 2 ways. You can read John as a historical document, or you can read the Gospel of John, as a book which speaks to us as much today as it did to the people back then. Now let's turn our eyes to the book of Revelation. Why is this so special? Because the last gospel from the 4 gospels is John, and then the last book of the entire New Testament is the Apocalypse. They're like bookends, and the book of Revelations is a remarkable document, fully inspired, immaculate, and incomprehensible. Still, you can say it's immaculate, because the book of Revelations is so cleverly delivered from the Christ that there's 7 times 7. Okay, let me explain that shortly. The first series of 7 are the 7 letters which are written to the 7 communities in Asia Minor: Philadelphia, Ephesus, Sardis, and so forth. And the Christ sends them letters, and it starts with praise, and then it really slams them for the errors of their way. And then it continues in the next sequence to have the seven trumpets are blown, by the 7 archangels, and then there are 7 bowls of poison which are poured on the earth, and so there are 7 times 7, just like the Gospel of John. And I remember when I was with Daskalos, I greeted him in the morning. He said, "Paul, I just realized something last night. I was taught something last night." This is why Daskalos always said he's a student and never a teacher. I was taught that there's not only 7 levels, like the 7 chakras, but each one of these levels is divided between 7 subplanes. And I said, fascinating. And so if you take Daskalos' wisdom and his experience and you say, okay, the 7 chakras have 7 sub-levels, then you come up with the number 49, okay? And if you turn your eyes to an inner reading of the Book of Revelations, you come up to 49. That means that the Book of Revelations is basically a document which is a recipe to address every aspect of ourselves as a therapy. And why do I say this? Because I have a little bit of experience with this, because I've been taking groups there for the last 6 years, and now in September, in about 4 weeks, I'll be traveling there again with a group for the 7th year, okay? And recently I had somebody in Andex who was going to be traveling there with her husband again, and she wanted to have 7 treatments in 7 days, because I'm known as a healer, whatever that means. And so she came to me, and she has a very intimate relationship with Patmos. She and her husband have been there. I think this will be the 4th time that they've joined the trip, and probably not the last. I have some people who've taken it 7 times. I have actually one participant who took it the first year and lives on the island. She's one of the 1,400 residents of the island who stay over winter there. 1,400. Tiny island. You don't have much privacy. And this woman, I won't say her name, was there, and it was a very intense week, because she feels a responsibility for the island. A lot of her spirit guides have a strong connection with the island. And somewhere in the middle of these 7 treatments, they showed me a beautiful vision of the island, which confirms partly the Greek mythology of the origin of the island with Selene, that deep within the island, directly under the monastery and then under the Artemis temple, is a channel which goes down into the earth. And it goes into the underworld, as it were, where Hades was, or is. And growing up over the last 22 years, because now because we're going through a major paradigm shift, a root started to emerge out of the muck of Patmos, and it's starting to rise up, and now it's very near the surface. And they showed me a beautiful image of a sea rose, a lotus emerging up through the John monastery, not harming in any way, and then totally blossoming over in a beautiful lotus flower over the monastery and over the island of Patmos. And you can describe it as a lotus flower. This woman describes it as a lighthouse. And the lenses of the lighthouse have been dirtied over the time, because there are both positive forces to Patmos, and there are also negative forces to Patmos. Patmos is a portal, It's not really on the earth, and it's not really in heaven. It's suspended somewhere between heaven and earth. That's why it makes the island unbelievably remarkable, because it has this combination of darkness and light, like we all do. And it is about to blossom now, as we're well through this paradigm shift. Trust me, folks. I'm keeping a close eye on this paradigm shift and the COVID time, and we're really about to emerge out of it. And Patmos plays a key role in the paradigm shift, because once the lotus flower blooms over the island and becomes a lighthouse, then it's going to spread the peace of Patmos all over the world. Literally. because Patmos is a portal to the upper planes where the absolute peace is kept. And once it's freed from, and don't get me wrong, from patriarchy that has prevailed for the last 1,600 years, and before that we had practically only matriarchy all through the Mediterranean basin. And now we're going to go into a balance between the male and the female, and Patmos is going to experience that. Because Patmos was an Artemis island, and now it's an island which belongs to Christianity. And Christianity is built up to a very large extent from misogyny, or at least a deep repression of the feminine. And it's been out of balance. Patmos has been out of balance like the whole world has been out of balance. That's why we're going through a paradigm shift. So let me talk to you a little bit about how we do this week. So we spend a week on this beautiful island. You can drive from one end to the other in a half an hour, and we do that with a bus trip to visit a couple of the 365 churches which bless the island. 365 churches. And we go to a couple of monasteries and also to a couple of nunneries, and just to get to know the island. And we also take a boat trip in the middle of the week to go to some of the neighboring islands. Okay, but what we do is we experience the Book of Revelations as a profound therapy. We don't see it as the end of time like a lot of fundamental Christians do. Rather, we see it as the end of karma for us. That's why it fits so well to a paradigm shift, because from my side, a lot of the karma that we've had will soon no longer apply, and the divine mercy is allowed to wash it away from us. Which is why the Book of Revelations is so important, because it is about a deep, deep cleaning. Some say destruction, but it's a destruction of all the patterns we have in us. So every morning we get together after breakfast. We stay at Nine Muses, which is an absolute paradise, an oasis on the island. It has 13 units, which I reserve for us. 3 of them are still free, that were protected, and it looks out over the Mediterranean Sea, and everybody has a big apartment, some with kitchenettes, and everybody has a terrace, a private terrace, which looks out over the sea. And then we get together and I introduce the subject of the day. In other words, I explain as much as I can, but not too much, because I don't want to give my interpretation. Funny enough, even though I'm the teacher, you'll see why. Because you have to surrender yourself to the Book of Revelations. You just have to surrender. You have to trust it. It's filled with chaos. And then either we stay at the hotel and then I read the text for the day, and I become a riverbed then for this energy gladly. And that alone is a therapy, because when I read this, then the energy which stands behind this energy, the Christ and the Holy Spirit, flow through me and into the participants and into me. Sometimes we take a walk to someplace on the island, like the monastery, and then we find a nice place to sit down, and then I read it there, directly above the cave of the Revelations, the cave of the Apocalypse. And then we take a break to go down and have a coffee in Scala, or just to relax, and then we meet up at the hotel later, and we've already chosen a partner from the group. And with this partner, we will experience all 7 treatments as an exchange. The text is all prepared. You don't have to have taken the education from me. There's actually a video on YouTube where I show how you give one of these treatments, and the combination of the meditations and then receiving a treatment towards the end of the day is extraordinary. It's absolutely extraordinary, and you see why it's not that important to understand the details of the Book of Revelations, but it's much more important to have them delivered into us. Okay, and I've been going through a remarkable summer myself, because I've been severely challenged this summer by patterns that have emerged in me, also from early childhood experiences. I gave a talk about that the other day. It's on YouTube. You can take a look at it. It's in English. And also, I've been extremely challenged by my epistemology and ontology. What are epistemology and what are ontology? Are their methodologies for understanding and defining reality. Epistemology is the way in which we understand things and we describe things and explain things for ourselves and also for our students. Ontology is the whole kit and caboodle. It's the way we define life. Now, normally, let me see how I can explain this to you. Normally, even now with the Book of Revelations, we read it, so we have a text. Okay, let's say this coffee cup here is the Book of Revelations. Okay, and I am the reader of the Book of Revelations. Okay, so I am the subject, and here's the object. And there's always a distance between the subject and the object. You know, here's the matter of a foot and there's always a safety in that because I stay who I am, and the Book of Revelation is a book that stays where it is. So it's not that threatening to me. But because now I'm challenged to throw into question my epistemological, sorry about this, and ontological methodologies, I think that we have to think about whether we have to forget that. In other words, what we know is that for a long time we've confined ourselves into the first, second, third, and maybe fourth dimension. That's a fact. Because we've built up societies which are built up on consumerism and materialism, and we live comfortably. Some of us not. And in doing so, the causal levels that are above the fourth level, like the fifth level and the sixth level and the seventh level, have been shut off to us, more or less. Or we've shut ourselves off to. We've been orphaned from them. And now, because of the paradigm shift, we see that the boundaries between the fourth dimension and the fifth dimension are dissolving. And suddenly, the place where all the perfect images are stored, and we are all projections of these perfect images. If you read Plato or if you know something about Daedalus or about the great Greek philosophers, they were so schooled in that interplay between divine images and then projected images. That's dissolving, and there's an inflowing now from the fifth dimension and even the sixth dimension, which is the place where which are ideas and not forms to be projected, simply ideas. If you follow Plato, perfect ideas are starting to flow into the fourth and third and into the lower levels. That the boundaries are gone now, and that's what I'm saying now, is that. We have to let go a little bit of our comfort zone in spirituality to say, here is the Book of Revelation, and here I am. And that's why I think this September on the island of Patmos is going to be even more extraordinary, because in end effect, we are the Book of Revelations. And I say that because earlier this summer, in English and also in German, I gave a number of one-day workshops on the Gospel of John and the 7 I am statements in the Gospel of John, and then another workshop on the 7 miracles in the Gospel of John. And I suddenly realized, even though I'm so schooled in the Gospel of John, that I don't know anything about the Gospel of John, because I realized that even the 7 I am statements, I am the bread of life, I am the light of the world, I am the door to the sheep, I am the good shepherd, are portals to the fifth and sixth dimension. And the 7 miracles, the healing of the blind man and the healing of the paralyzed man and the raising of Lazarus and so forth and so forth, they are also portals to higher dimensions. And knowing that, I strongly suspect that the book of Revelations is exactly that. So, in a nutshell, what happens is the book of Revelations describes that through the destruction of old patterns, a new earth emerges. Okay? This is a law that Christ gave in the New Testament that you can't put into a old wineskin new wine because it'll burst. And you'll have neither the wine or the wineskin. And we can't expect to to remain who we are and not be transformed into a new earth. And if you're not transformed into a new earth, then the heavenly city will not descend. That's what happens. Through these 7 days, there's a deep cleaning of who we are and who we were. And structures are destroyed through this chaos. And then on the last day, we are a new earth. And then the new earth is basically, we are transformed into our souls. And then the heavenly city drops down, descends down, and basically they emerge in a wedding, like the spirit and the soul. They become one because of the book of Revelations and the island of Patmos. And this beautiful city is described as a place where there are no temples, there are no churches, there's no mosques, there's no synagogues, it is empty and it's united. And what we see, and this is why personally I have very little concern that we're going in a good direction. Paradigm shifts are not easy, they're never easy, but they're always necessary. Christ says, look at it, I'll make everything new in the book of Revelations. And he does. It does. Is that once this new earth starts to emerge, then the counter forces, and they're not counter forces, start to become extremely aggressive. Because the counter forces don't want to let go of the status quo. Now, we see counter forces now being around us extremely aggressive. We see extreme politics. We see the pharmaceutical industry, I'm sorry to say this, basically poisoning our children and on ourselves. And respect to anybody who is vaccinated and who's not vaccinated, I don't want to go into that one bit. But we see that the bank industries are getting extremely aggressive. We see that the industrial military complex is getting extremely aggressive. We see that all of our structures are getting extremely aggressive because they know there's a major change going on. And they have fear of change because they have fear of losing profits. They have fear of losing consumerism. They have fear of losing control. And the beautiful thing about the book of Revelations is at the moment that the devil starts to become aggressive and wants to consume a woman who's about to give birth, and she gives birth anyway, then the Archangel Michael is allowed to be active. And Archangel Michael and his soldiers, his angels, start to fight against the devil, and Michael never loses. Michael never loses. The good never loses, you know. Even if we go back to the time of Christ 2,000 years ago, as the Christ child was born in Bethlehem 2,022 years ago, King Herod said, wait a minute, this can't be. He learned from the 3 kings that the Christ child was born, and he sent out his soldiers over the plains of Judea to kill every child, every boy under the age of 2. The slaughter of the innocents. But you can't kill the Christ child because the Christ child is not against anything. It's love, and love is not against anything. So this is why everything's going well, and this is why the book of Revelations and the island of Patmos fit together so well. Okay, I've said my piece. I'll just share with you my 2 children. They're now in LA, and they love Patmos. And they've been with me, with my group. They don't take part in the seminar. But they love to spend a week on Patmos. They love the beauty, not necessarily the energy, but who knows. And because we take this beautiful boat ride to the neighboring islands, they like to join that because there's like a blue lagoon and they like to swim in that. And they don't get in anybody's way. And we stop on an island to have a coffee. And one day we were doing this, and I had the treatment form with me in case somebody wanted to do the treatment that day. And Yana said to me, "Papa, can I take a look at that paper you have?" And I said, "Yeah, sure, Yana. Here it is." And I'm talking to the people, in German about whatever. And then Yana says, "Papa, you say you're a healer." And I said, "Well, they call me that, Yana." And she said, "Papa, this is unbelievable. But it says here that 1/3 of the mountains will fall into the sea. 1/3 of the fish will die. The sea will turn blood red. Papa, you can't do this to the people." And I said, "Yana," don't you see these people? They've done the seminar 3-4 times. They love it. They're sadomasochistic." I said, "Yana, someday they'll understand it." Like I said, the Book of Revelations is an extraordinary document, and this island of Patmos is one of a kind. You really don't get the sense, like Artemis said, "This is my island. Bring it up, Apollo, from the bottom of the sea. I want to be there." And she's still there, by the way. She's still there. And Sibylla is still there. That's why deep within the island is a beautiful balance between the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And Patmos is going through a rebirth like the whole world is. And a rebirth is not easy, but all of us experienced a birth, either as mothers or by ourselves. And it is said, and I shouldn't say this because I'm a man, I witnessed the birth of our 2 children firsthand, and it is painful for both the mother and the child, but after the rebirth you have an incarnated soul in your hands, and the pain is all gone and the joy is there. And that's what we're going through. We're going through the final phases of these birth contractions right now, and it's not easy. Put your seatbelts on. It's not easy, and it's not over. And that's why I can tell you, if you manage to join me and join the group on Patmos in 4 weeks, I can promise you that it's going to be probably the most extraordinary week we spent on Patmos in 7 years. If not, I'll be there next year, God willing. Yeah. Take care, everybody. Stay in peace, stay in hope, stay in love, stay in faith, and be role models for the people around you. People need role models because a lot of people are slipping into anxiety and fear, and they might even be becoming aggressive, and they need to see that people like us, we know that a paradigm shift is not easy. But we know that it's always going to end in something important, All right. Bless you all, and arrivederci. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. Godspeed. Godspeed.